The Panamanian government sent personnel to forcibly take control of the two ports along the Panama Canal owned by Li Ka-shing's family without consulting him. What exactly is the game here, and how big is the gambit behind it? This occurred on February the 23rd. Panama moved swiftly, sending personnel to take control of the administrative buildings and docks at Balboa Port and Cristobal Port. They barred representatives of the original company from entering and informed employees that they must now follow government directives or face legal action. Cheung Kong Holdings issued a statement asserting that it had operated there for over 2 decades, having renewed a 25-year contract in 2021. It condemned Panama's sudden declaration that the contract was unconstitutional and illegal, followed by the forced seizure of assets, calling it completely unreasonable. The company stated it reserves all legal rights, including seeking arbitration at the International Chamber of Commerce, with potential claims reaching $2 billion. The Hong Kong SAR government promptly condemned Panama's actions as a breach of trust that undermines the spirit of contracts, lodging a formal protest with Panama's Consul General in Hong Kong. On the surface, this appears to be a legal and commercial matter, a Panamanian court invalidating a contract with the government enforcing the ruling. Yet the driving force behind it is clear to all. For years, the United States has regarded the Panama Canal as a vital asset in its own backyard. This sentiment intensified under the Trump administration's so-called Trumpism, which treats the Western Hemisphere as a sphere of influence demanding absolute control. From Washington's perspective, Chinese companies operating ports at both ends of the canal represent a security threat that must be eliminated. U.S. Secretary of State Rubio was the first to jump in, posting that he was encouraged by the Panamanian court's ruling. U.S. media followed suit, hailing it as a major victory for Washington in curbing China's influence. The Wall Street Journal even went so far as to suggest other nations could learn from this playbook, reevaluating their relationships with the world's second-largest economy. Last year, the U.S. pressured Panama to withdraw from the Belt and Road Initiative. This January, after Panama's Supreme Court ruled the long-term port contracts unconstitutional, U.S. forces immediately deployed to Panama for jungle warfare training and established a new military task force, the first large-scale permanent U.S. military presence since troops withdrew in 1999. This coordinated campaign sends a clear message: defiance invites the barrel of a gun. As a small nation wholly reliant on U.S. security guarantees, Panama understands the economic costs of antagonizing China. Yet faced with an immediate security threat, it must choose the lesser of two evils: cooperating with the U.S. to forcibly reclaim these ports. Looking further ahead, the U.S. recently intervened in Venezuela by directly deploying troops to arrest Maduro, sounding an alarm across Latin America. South American nations all understand the saying, heaven is too far, but America is too close. With their security lifeline held by others, economic partnerships often aren't truly their own choice. Panama's urgency this time, bypassing negotiations and forcibly taking control, was largely due to being intimidated by America's tactic of making an example out of others. A deeper context lies in Panama's economic lifeline, extending beyond the canal to its flag of convenience, ship registration business. Nearly 1/5 of the world's vessels sail under the Panamanian flag, generating billions annually for Panama. Yet this business is exceptionally fragile. Panama offers no protection for ships flying its flag when incidents occur, relying instead on tacit approval from major powers. Recently, the U.S. seized several tankers at sea as part of its campaign against Venezuela, most of which were Panamanian flag vessels. This was essentially a message to Panama: I can dismantle your registration system anytime I choose. Seeing this move, the Panamanian government grew even more anxious. Preserving the flag of convenience business was paramount, forcing them to completely capitulate to the U.S. on the port issue. Can these two ports be reclaimed? Currently, it's certain that C.K. Hutchison will pursue legal arbitration, but this process will drag on for a long time. Moreover, with political pressure looming, whether the arbitration ruling can be enforced remains highly uncertain. Panama has already temporarily handed over port operations to subsidiaries of Denmark's Maersk and Mediterranean Shipping Company, granting them an 18-month provisional operating license. They've stated that a public tender will follow, ultimately selling the operating rights to another party. This effectively kicks C.K. Hutchison out of the picture entirely, handing the reins to European companies. Diplomatically, China has stated its firm commitment to safeguarding the legitimate rights and interests of its enterprises. However, directly confronting Panama head-on is likely to yield limited results. Some analysts suggest China could employ certain tools, such as imposing sanctions on relevant Panamanian institutions and individuals, or suspending certain investment projects to make Panama feel the pain. But the root cause of this issue lies in the United States. Reports suggest President Trump may visit China soon, raising the possibility that the U.S. is deliberately creating leverage before the visit, seizing assets now to use as bargaining chips later. To truly resolve such issues, protests and legal measures alone are insufficient. Partnering nations must feel assured that China's interests will be protected here, and that confidence ultimately stems from hard power. Especially in distant waters, you need the capability to project your presence. A recent development is particularly noteworthy. Just as the Panama port incident unfolded, a Chinese naval task force appeared near the Gulf of Oman, comprising a Type 055 destroyer, a Type 052D destroyer, and a space survey ship. American media speculated this was to bolster Iran, but in reality, China, Russia, and Iran are about to conduct the Security Belt 2026 joint naval exercise, and this fleet is heading there to participate. That said, regardless of the purpose, deploying such large destroyers to the Middle East forces the U.S. military to carefully consider its own maneuvers and deployments in the region. Vessels of the 055 class possess formidable detection capabilities, allowing them to monitor every movement in the surrounding area with crystal clarity. Isn't this the most direct manifestation of a distant sea presence? The U.S. has been closely monitoring the pace of China's naval expansion. A recent Newsweek article noted that China's Navy now boasts over 370 vessels and submarines, including 3 aircraft carriers, making it the world's largest in terms of quantity. The article also highlighted that last year, China deployed a dual-carrier strike group simultaneously in the Western Pacific, demonstrating its growing capability to operate far from its homeland. Pentagon reports even suggest China aims to build 9 aircraft carriers, potentially surpassing U.S. carrier numbers in the Pacific. While this may be foreign media hype, it reflects a clear trend. China is accelerating its pursuit of blue water naval capabilities, so the Navy's relentless production of new vessels isn't just idle fuss. Large destroyers like the Type 055 can easily handle long-range operations. The Type 076 amphibious assault ship combines transport and combat capabilities while carrying large UAVs for long-range reconnaissance and strikes. And the Fujian electromagnetic catapult carrier, whose primary mission in 2026 is to transition from basic combat readiness to full operational capability, will then engage in fleet training and deep ocean deployment. We may eventually witness a dual carrier formation centered around the Fujian. These are the assets that truly compel nations to engage in reasoned dialogue. It's not about deploying them for combat, but when these vessels routinely appear near others' doorsteps, smaller nations will weigh the consequences more carefully before heeding American directives. The current world order is shifting, and old rules no longer apply. Such scenarios will likely become more frequent. What Dahlia refers to as the 6th stage of the grand cycle boils down to a phase where strength prevails and reason takes a backseat. The practical approach is to maintain a firm resolve while preparing for all contingencies, negotiating with one hand while strengthening our distant sea capabilities with the other. The Panama incident, at its core, is a signal. It marks the arrival of an era where might makes right, and survival of the fittest reigns supreme.